All right, aloha friends. Welcome to another episode of Game Time with the Goss. I am Brian Gossett and pleased to be joined today with David Rainwater and Alex Oppenborn, who are both part of the Fort Worth Fire volleyball club team, and Alex Oppenborn, also the head girls volleyball coach at Lake Worth. First off, thanks for joining me, you guys. The big focus today, we're going to talk about boys volleyball and the growth that it's been across the country. But first, I just want to start off with some background and let you guys just kind of let the listeners know sort of your volleyball history in the past and leading up to this point, where it's taken you and maybe some playing days. But we can start with Alex. Just how long has volleyball been in your life, and what does your path look like?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. I went to Francis Howell North in outside of St. Louis in St. Charles, Missouri, and I played volleyball since I was in sixth grade. My mom was actually our assistant varsity coach for girls, and she's thus since then transitioned and coached on the boys team or on the boys side. So up in Missouri, we have boys volleyball at the public school in the high school level, and both of my younger brothers played. I had a brief stint. I played at Western Illinois, and then I transferred to Oklahoma State and played club there. And then when I moved down to Texas, I started my coaching career. I've coached at Trinity Valley High School. I coached at Granbury High School, and now I'm the head volleyball coach and girls coordinator at Lake Worth. And then in the club side, I've coached at Fort Worth Fire. This will be my sixth year at Fire, and I'm the recruiting coordinator as well. And so I deal with both the boys and the girls side at Fort Worth Fire as a club.
Well, my path is very different. I I was born and raised here in Texas. We didn't have volleyball. I grew up playing the traditional sports, football and baseball here in Texas. One of my best friends and I, in the off season between those sports during the summer, we would play sand. So I was self-taught playing sand volleyball, and that's what that was my first introduction to volleyball. When I went to college, was playing baseball, and one of the guys that I played ball with, he formed our men's club team at the school, and we both played. That's how I got introduced into indoor volleyball. And then God blessed me with four daughters, and I got into coaching, and just always have loved the sport, loved the game. This will be my 13th season head coaching for club, and this will be my 7th season with Fort Worth Fire.
Yeah, just we'll start with Fort Worth Fire. Boys, in 2021, 2 years ago, you started the boys team with that program, that organization, and that team ended up qualifying for nationals. And then you've seen the growth in the last 2 years. Four teams last year, and two of them qualified for nationals, and now you have four teams again, and hopefully all four can make it. But yeah, just talk about Alex. Just talk about the growth these 2 or 3 years, and just seeing more boys come out and play some volleyball.
Yeah, so like I said, my brothers both played growing up, and I'm the oldest, and so my two younger brothers played at my public high school. They've had men's volleyball as a club team for the last at least 15 years. And this year, in the past, actually, they just sanctioned boys volleyball as a MSHA approved sport in the state of Missouri, and Kentucky and Minnesota actually also followed suit. So I believe there are 9 states now that have boys volleyball as a sport, a state-sponsored sport. So I've always been around boys volleyball. I've always had a soft spot for it. I've watched my brothers played. We've traveled a lot, just like they traveled with me going to club. My mom coached both us, myself, and my brothers. And so it's been a big thing in our family. So coming down to Texas, not seeing a whole lot of boys volleyball was definitely like a shock to me. I didn't know that it was only concentrated in St. Louis as much as it was. So when I was at Fire and we had a coach that started our boys program 2 years ago, that was really exciting for me to see that growth. And then we've seen just an incredible increase in the interest around boys volleyball, both at the high school and the club level. Fire is the only club on the west side of Fort Worth that offers like a high school age club team. There's a lot of other clubs that are starting to build their own teams as well and their own programs. There's programs for younger ages as well. Like this year, I think we're going to have a 14s, a 15s, 16s, and 17s, potentially an 18s team as well. But there's a lot of growth in the high schools. So Trinity Valley, Country Day, a lot of the private schools have boys volleyball as a sport, but a lot of the public schools just haven't been able to have it yet. So like Fort Worth ISD, they have girls flag football, and to offset that, they have boys volleyball. And so they're running boys volleyball kind of like a club. And so they'll run it like a spring league. And right now, most of the time, the coaches are the girls high school head coaches that are running on the boys side. But UIL, it was brought to the UIL board this year as looking at using boys volleyball as a pilot sport and doing some research on it and seeing if it's something that could be feasible to put into UIL athletics. And so there's a lot of schools that are trying to kind of start dipping their toes in and seeing if it's something that they could build off of. But it's a great opportunity for boys in general. We had 3 boys, David Miller, Garrett Beal, and Justin Wilson on our club that signed and are playing at college this year. So just the increase in the financial opportunity for college athletes now that's changed. It's such an important, I think, moment for boys volleyball because it gives our kids more opportunity to play in college, to build their resume, not only as an athlete, but also, academics and financially. And so it's a really exciting time for boys volleyball. And there's a lot of programs, First Point Volleyball, that are built to try and advance volleyball in like the high schools across the nation. So it's a really exciting time, and I've been really blessed to see it grow. And I've been really blessed that I've been around it since I was little, and I got to see my brothers grow up in it. And now I get to see boys grow up and sign and play in college and enjoy that time and enjoy the sport.
Yeah, David, for me, I've been covering girls volleyball for last 9 or 10 years, and you know as well as we do just how talented the DFW Metroplex is, and
For sure.
it's a wild scene, going to places like the Dallas Convention Center,
Right.
or even back when it used to be the TAV arena in Louisville, Carrollton, and just for me personally, it was just like watching like 12 or 13 courts at a time with hundreds and hundreds of girls. I mean, is it just as insane and crazy and at the boys select tournaments?
I will tell you, the one thing. So, to your point, I mean, the North Texas area for girls volleyball is it's one of the most heavily recruited in the country. It is one of the most competitive regions in USA volleyball, and having coached in that arena, you could not be. I think you've undersold it just a little bit. It's a very competitive world, and we have a lot of very talented girls in this area. And it's like you said, it's very fun to watch. The thing that I love about the men's game is the difference between the two is in the men's game. It's the speed and the power of the game are a little bit different. And just it's not a slight to the girls side of volleyball, but when you're coaching the men's game, you see it really is based off of a very powerful serve and very powerful attack. Defense is always a critical factor, but on the girls' side of play, defense plays, I think, a heavier role. And on the men's side, defense is really it's a critical piece. But when you're playing against such powerful hitters, it's really just kind of being in the right place at the right time, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, to your point, it is very fun to watch. I've caught myself multiple times, being caught up more as a spectator than a coach, because it's so much fun to be on the sideline and watch. But it is a very fast paced game. And like I said, impressed with how our boys have done and picked up the sport so quickly. Most of those kids that play for us, they don't start playing volleyball until late. Most of our kids well, a huge chunk of them will come from other sports like basketball or soccer or track or whatever that they've done, and they'll play volleyball as either like a hobby or a second option, and then they get into it and they transition. But those other sports allow them to quickly pick up the skills and develop into volleyball very quickly. So that's where I think we've seen a lot of that success, is that those boys, their other sports, their other athletic endeavors have translated very easily to the volleyball side. And it's incredible to watch, incredible to be a part of.
Yeah, the thing I'm most impressed about with some of these big tournaments like Lone Star,
Mm-hmm.
um, is the focus that they have to realize that uh, it's all these whistles. That's
Mm-hmm.
the funny thing is it's all these whistles, and they're tune in with their court's whistles. I mean, I would be stopping every single time because I would hear one and hear one. So it's pretty crazy to go and watch a
It
tournament
is.
at Lone Star.
Last season, the boys that I coached our 16s team last year. We went to Austin for a national qualifier, and there was two simultaneous qualifiers. You had a girls national qualifier in Austin, and then you had a boys national qualifier. And it was, if you are a volleyball fan, it was like probably the coolest place you could be, because they had, pretty much nonstop. It was I think, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 18s that has their national qualifier in Austin.
Yep.
So you had all the 18s girls that were there, and a lot of those girls are still unsigned, but a lot of them have already committed to college. So you're getting really kind of the best of the best talent-wise that's there to watch. And then you have the boys national qualifier. And so there was different waves, like the women's wave would play in the morning, the men's wave would play in the afternoon. And if you're a volleyball fan, you just get to be a part of that all day long. You go in and watch some awesome volleyball. And then, of course, I get to coach that afternoon. But in that environment, we had teams literally from all over the country. And that's where we qualified for nationals. It was, I think, our third or fourth tournament of the season, and we qualified for nationals. We ended up playing in the championship game against HVA, which is Houston Volleyball Academy. And realistically, they're kind of they've been for a long time in Texas. They've been kind of the only game in town. So to get an opportunity to play them and play them tough, we ended up finishing second in that tournament, but qualified for nationals. We still got our bid for nationals. Just a very unique and awesome experience. But yeah, to your point, that was some of the best volleyball I've been around in many, many years. It was just fun to watch and fun to be there and be a part of.
And lots of college coaches all over the place.
Yes.
Which is really exciting to see too.
Yeah, Alex, just going off of that, just kind of being the recruiting coordinator for Fort Worth Fire, for the boys side, look what we'll do with the boys. Just talk about the growth of colleges across the country, and when it comes to recruiting and things like that, does it make it more difficult or easier versus the girls with the amount of college coaches that there are?
I don't want to necessarily say easier or more difficult. I think it's just it's different. So there's about 250 schools, colleges in the US right now that have men's volleyball that are at a collegiate level. A lot of schools have club teams as well, just like they do on the girls' side. So, but the boys' side is definitely not as saturated as the girls' side as far as how many schools have the opportunity. So I would say 5 to 10 years ago, if you played boys volleyball, it was pretty likely that you would be able to find a college that you could go and play at. And now with the growth of the sport so rapidly, so quickly, I think boys volleyball is one of the highest ranking growth sports in the US. With that change and those numbers, it's getting a little bit more difficult, I would say, for the kids, just because there's a bigger pool for colleges to pick from. And so it's definitely not close to as saturated as it is on the girls' side, but it is becoming somewhat of a different process. I will also say that boys develop a lot later than girls do. So you may have a boy that you're looking at as a freshman who's going to grow 6 to 12 inches by the time they're a senior. And so the recruiting process is a little bit different for a lot of those colleges. So whereas girls, a lot of times you guys are done, we're done growing by 8th grade freshman year. You get some that are going to grow later on, but for the majority, if you've got a stud girl, female player as a freshman, she's getting looks early on. If you have a stud freshman on the boys side, a lot of times those big schools will wait to see how everybody else develops until they're older, until they're like a sophomore going into their junior year. And so just the timeline is a little bit different on the girls' side versus the boys' side, just because of that athletic development, the physical development. And like, David said, the game in men's is so much more physical. So that is a major part when schools are looking to recruit.
Yeah, I got lucky enough. I was able to grow 9 inches throughout high school. So
there you go. See, 6 to 12, you're right in the middle.
David, just kind of talk about the summer with, I mentioned the boys with going to nationals. You had 2 teams going to nationals, but yeah, talk about the boys and the girls and what the summer was like for Fort Worth Fire, and maybe what some expectations for the next upcoming season.
Well, it's so the boys season, this was probably the longest season I've been a part of, because nationals happens in July. So most of the major tournaments have finished up by end of April. And so you've got a lag there before you actually go to nationals. And so basically in the past with teams that I've coached that didn't qualify, you're done in May. You start tryouts in July. So you've kind of got a window there to kind of recoup as a coach. I didn't get that this year, which was nice. It was fun to be kind of coaching all throughout the summer. But my counterpart that was our 18s coach, Brandon Lundstrom, he's the head coach at Country Day. Huge amount of respect for him. He's actually the one that coached our first team at Fire. Did a wonderful job recruiting and marketing the program, and he had a big hand in bringing players in and expanding the program for us into that second year. We were able to put together 2 teams, obviously, that qualified, and when we went to nationals, the level of competition was just, it's hard to describe. It's like going from being the top dog in your neighborhood, and then you show up and you're at nationals, and these are all the top dogs from their neighborhood. So the level of play was absolutely incredible. I think the most, probably one of my most memorable moments from nationals, and I think the boys would agree, was our day 1 of pool play, because you'll play 3 days of pool play and then a bracket. So it's a 4-day tournament, which is a grind. But on our day 1, we played on the feature court, which is really cool, has stadium seats. It's televised, it's broadcast. And so to be on that feature court day 1, and we had a great day. We played really well. And it was, I think all 3 matches went 3 sets, very, very competitive volleyball. Nobody really dominated anybody. And we had a team from New York in that pool. We had a team from Missouri, us, and I think that was it. I think it was just 3-team pool that day, but just very cool experience. And our boys were really excited to get that opportunity. But then when we came home, we did well. We came home and we're right back into it. So, immediately we jump into tryouts and start putting together the team. The team this year, I'm really excited about. We've because of the programs that are growing around us, we lost some players that decided to go try some other clubs. We've picked up some new players, and I think that's going to be something that continues to be something that the club has to deal with as the programs continue to grow. We experience that on the girls' side quite a bit. You'll see players shift between clubs, and they'll play a season here, play a season there, come back, maybe try something different. Those opportunities, it's a blessing and a curse, because on the one hand, when you have those limited club opportunities, you get to retain some of that talent. When you start to have these other club opportunities, there's opportunities for them to shop around. So we've seen some guys try to go play some other places, and I hate to see them go, but I love that they have the opportunity. I think that's like I said, it's a blessing and a curse. I think for the club overall, one of the things that I think has been huge for us is that we have a great director. Cody Hansen is like, he took a chance. And when we brought it to him, he said, yeah, I think we can make this work. Let's do it. So two, he was willing to take the chance and put that together. But more importantly than that, when we bring him our crazy ideas and the things that we think will help grow the program, he's extremely supportive and is on board with doing what we're trying to do, placing Alex in a recruiting position to help these boys. And again, to have the kind of success she had in year one. I mean, we had those three players that she mentioned earlier. That was their second year playing volleyball. All three of those players, their second year playing volleyball, to get offers in college is huge.
And one of our boys went and played D2. So that was really exciting for 2 years worth of volleyball. Like, it helped that he was 6'5", but still.
Yes. I mean, some things you can't coach.
Yeah.
But the other side of that too, Brian, is that when you look at some of these boys, we had a lot of boys on our 16s that were already getting looks from colleges. In fact, we added a tournament and went to we went to the SoCal Cup in Southern California in Los Angeles. We took our boys there to get them opportunity and FaceTime in front of a lot of coaches. And, it was a wonderful experience, good competitive volleyball, kind of gave us a measuring stick of where we rank on the national scale, because you had some of the best teams in the country were there. And so it was a great opportunity for us, put our boys in front of several of the college coaches. But even though that 16s group started to get looks from our setter was getting contacts from Penn State and some other colleges. So, I mean, we've got the kind of talent in the area that can have that, that national presence. But it's still just so new that I don't think we've even tapped into what's really available here. I think as you talk to me in 5 years, and this will be a completely different animal in 5 years. It'll be crazy to see.
Talking with Alex Oppenborn and David Rainwater with Fort Worth Fire. Alex, just because you've been more around it, you mentioned Trinity Valley, who boys and girls won the state title in SBC last fall. I mean, if we were to have boys volleyball in the UIL, would it be a fall sport with the girls? Could they make it work? I've talked to a couple other coaches. They threw out spring season maybe because spring doesn't really have anything going on in the gyms. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so up in Missouri, which again, I go back to Missouri because that's where I grew up, and my brothers played for High Performance, which is a big club out of St. Louis, very successful club. And they did boys volleyball in the spring up in Missouri. So girls volleyball was in the fall and boys volleyball was in the spring. Down here, most of the Trinity Valley Country Day, the private schools that have teams and the clubs, when they're playing in a league, a lot of that happens in the fall. So it's at the same time as the girls. And so just like David was saying, there's positives and negatives to both sides. I think that is a conversation more of, are they going to put another sport in Texas that's a boy sport and put it with football? Because a lot of that's right. David's shaking his head. No, Texas football is king, and so I think that has a big push as far as when that season would go. But then if you put it in the spring, then you're looking at baseball. I know, talking with the Fort Worth ISD coaches, a lot of their boys also play soccer. And so soccer actually lends itself really well to volleyball, just the speed of the game, the quickness, not necessarily the height, but the speed of the game definitely helps. And so finding a time for boys sports, you're going to have to kind of look at, it's not going to be a perfect world, and it's a growth. It's going to be growth, and there's going to be growing pains. I know with Missouri just adopting it as a MISHA approved sport, or a state sanctioned sport, they're kind of going to take a step back, because in the past, the high schools were in charge of deciding their own districts. And so they were able to mix up who went with what school. And so you didn't have all of your top level teams in one district. they kind of spread it out. And so now that Missouri's taking it over and it's a MISHA approved sport, then they're going to have to start looking at the districts, and it's going to be geographically based, just like it is in Texas. And so a lot of the schools are going to be frustrated for a few years because they're going to be put in with all the big schools that already have had programs for a while. And so it might deter some schools from creating, like adding more boys programs, because they don't just want to get, beat up the first few years, but that's kind of what's going to happen. But it's kind of like you got to take a step back in order to progress. And for the sport overall, it's going to be a benefit for boys volleyball overall in, the states that have just approved it. And I don't have a whole lot of knowledge on like Kentucky and Minnesota, just because I don't have as many contacts up there. But I know that overall, all of the boys coaches in the state of Missouri are really excited about the growth that they're having. And I think UIL, like David said, in 5 years, this is going to be a different conversation of what's going on in Texas. But on the recruiting side, when I'm talking to college coaches, it was some D1 schools, talking to them about some of the players that were on David and Brandon's teams last year. And a lot of them don't know what's going on in Texas. And a lot of the response that I've got on the recruiting side was, we would love to try and see if we can get a tournament, a big tournament down in Texas that draws a lot of these teams from outside, like the edges, the coasts, the teams that are on the coast. And they're like, we would love to just talk to you about what the growth looks like in Texas, how many schools are having it. So those college coaches are starting to notice Texas, but we are, for lack of a better word, we are a little bit behind on the boys side because they're not playing in high school. Whereas the boys that are playing in California, in Missouri, in Florida, they're playing all year round, just like the girls are. Whereas down in Texas, a lot of these boys are only playing during club season. And so it's hard to compete with those big schools, those bigger clubs, like David has said, on that national scale. So to go back to your question, I don't have the best answer for you. I think that football would not be thrilled if there was another boys sport in the fall. Where obviously we have cross country, which has girls and boys going on, and tennis, which is kind of all year round. But football is king, and you're going to have to kind of work around that in Texas.
Well, and even at the collegiate level, the men's programs play in the spring.
Yep.
And I think that's what when you look at like a lot of the programs that we were up against. The club season in California is in the fall, then they stop and they play their high school season. So that their teams basically stop doing anything. They do their high school season, then the team comes back together for their nationals or their final part of their season. So I think, I'm a big.
It happens the same in Missouri. They pause for high school.
Yeah, I'm a big believer of don't reinvent the wheel, kind of thing. So I would tend to believe that it'll probably be more spring, would be more likely. But, the reality of the situation is that when you look at boys sports, those athletes they're going to come over to volleyball. Most of those kids are going to be coming from, they're going to be done with playing basketball or whatever. They're going to be coming to volleyball. That'll a lot of times that'll be their primary sport. So I don't know that we have a downside either way, but my guess is that we'll probably follow suit with the ones that have gone before us, and we'll probably try to match up with them.
Yeah, in the spring. And I think that the other thing you have to think of in high school, just in the way the high school staff is structured, if you have if boy season is in the fall, then you have to worry about gym space for both sports and sharing gym space. And a lot of schools, that don't have a ton of gym space for that. And then you also have to look at coaching stipends and how much money the school has to devote to a specific sport. And if you have both boys and girls volleyball in the fall, then you're going to have an increased number of coaches as well that you're paying to be able to coach those sports. Whereas if you do it in the spring, sometimes like your girl coach can also be your boy coach if they want to do that. So the logistics of it overall look, from our perspective, looks better in the spring, but that also doesn't mean that, things can't change. And people who are in UIL, they are going to have a different viewpoint of it. And that is something that they're looking at right now, is just how can it work? Flag football on the girl side is getting a lot bigger, and Title IX, you have to have like an offsetting sport. So right now that's kind of the sport that they're looking at is boys volleyball and flag football, which is what Fort Worth ISD is doing. And they're using it as a pilot sport in Fort Worth ISD to see how it works for them.
Yeah, flag football, just 2 years in, got to go watch both championship games. So yeah, it's an awesome event, and kudos to Fort Worth ISD. UIL could also probably maybe take a look at water polo. They just added it last year and sort of model it for boys volleyball. And I know water polo is kind of the same way. They always had club, and now it's a sanction. It's the second year for water polo. But to add them in the fall last year, and then add possibly boys volleyball in the fall, that's a little bit too much.
It's a lot. And you
It's a
also
lot.
have lacrosse. Lacrosse is getting a lot bigger as well,
Yeah.
which is a bigger sport. I know up north it's, and you know, again on the coast it's a little bit bigger, but their football is not as big in those locations. So football just, you know, it draws a lot down in Texas for all the right reasons.
And I want to get you out on this. I wanted to make sure I bring this up because again, talking with Alex Oppenborn, she is the head coach at Lake Worth for the girls volleyball. So want to give some love for the Bullfrogs. This is your second year with Lake Worth.
Yes, second year as the head volleyball coach at Lake Worth. Yep.
Just coming off a sweep of Eastern Hills last night, Tuesday. Just talk about year two, and you know, trying to build this volleyball culture at Lake Worth.
Yeah, so when I came in last year, that was a big push, is just building the culture of volleyball. I joke around with the girls all the time. I'm like, all right, we're in big girl volleyball now. Like there's different challenges that are going to come. So last year was really just about getting them to, I think, love the sport and learn how to even just learn how to learn, you know, how to practice, how to play in games, the mindset, mentality training, all of that kind of stuff. And this year we're starting to see that, or I'm starting to see that the kids are, you know, they've locked in, they know what the expectations are, and they're starting to see progress and growth. I've got a really great JV coach that just came in, Jody Dixon from Weatherford. My freshman coach, Wanda Estevez, is really great with the kids and just developing them and nurturing them. And so I think my coaching staff and also at the middle school, they've been doing a really good job of building up that program. And I'm really excited to see the kids that are coming up. I know that we've got some great seniors this year. Allison Aleman, who's my libero, Iolis Diaz, one of my outsides. And so Alize Patino, one of my setters. And then Amy Montalongo last night, she had a record-breaking 10 aces in the game last night. So we were really excited for her. And just, you know, they're learning how to be better leaders. And I'm really big on being good stewards of the school, putting a positive view on the school and making sure that it's not just about volleyball. It's also about building young women and making sure that they have good character and that they're representing the school and me in a positive way.
Yeah, speaking of Allison, had 1,000 digs last year.
Yep.
Was actually #1 returners here in the Metroplex. Just what makes her different at the libero?
So Allison is really, I use the word cerebral. She thinks about a lot of things. She is a great leader. She hasn't played club as much as this is actually, she's only played club for 1 year. And she just, you know, she wants to learn. She wants to take as much in all the time. She's constantly asking me questions. She's constantly trying to come up with different things that we can do as a team to better us both skill wise and on like the team side. And so she's been a really great, just a blessing to have on this team. We're working with her on trying to get her recruited for college. And that's something that is a big goal for her. So we're trying to help her along with that. She's is going to be playing club for our 18s team at Fort Worth Fire this year as well. So I'm really excited about getting her to play club. But just she's incredibly intelligent. Grades are a huge importance to her. When we started talking about clubs, she was like, I'm not going to miss a ton of school, right? Like I'm not going to have, you know, my attendance take a knock, right? That was her only concern. And so we've been working with her, and she's just, like I said, she just thinks through every single play. All the girls know that she's there backing them up. And so we're kind of working right now on them not relying too much on her and still doing your job. Like she's great and she's back there and she's going to back you up, but you still got to do your job so that she can do hers. But yeah, she's been a blessing, and we're really excited to see how she does this season.
That's awesome. And you know what, David, I'll get you on this because I don't want to miss the opportunity to bring this up because, I do appreciate, people in your position and first responders. But we see the shirt and the logo, North Richland Hills. Just how long you been over there?
So I have, well, this December, I'll have 28 years in the fire service. I have 26 with the city of North Richland Hills. And yeah, I tell everybody this is, of course, this is my full-time job. And I've been very blessed to get to do this. I work for an amazing city. I have, probably the best job in the world. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Volleyball, I coach volleyball because I love it, not because I'm not there. I'm not there because I need the income or any of that part of it. I love the game. I love the sport, and I love to be around those boys and girls when I coach girls as well. But I've always viewed it as, I tell people this all the time. When I was an athlete, I learned lessons as an athlete that I didn't realize I was learning at the time. There were things that sports and coaches taught me as a young athlete that have transitioned and been like life lessons that have helped me all throughout my life and my career, whether it be in college, whether it be in the fire service, marriage, doesn't matter. There's just those lessons that come into play. And that's one of the things I view as my job as a coach, is to help continue those life lessons forward and help them get some of that resilience and some of that ability, because, I think we all know life is tough, and sports is tough. And I think it teaches you how to deal with both. And like I said, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's been truly a blessing, and I'm fortunate that my boss supports me in doing these things on the side. It's pretty awesome.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate you guys, and I'll be sort of in your neck of the woods tomorrow, Thursday, watching Richland and Halton play some football there at
Well,
Burkeville.
that's my alma mater. So I know they're not the Rebels anymore, but go Richland.
But you're still a Rebel, right?
Always, through and through.
Yeah, you're not a Royal, but yeah, I'll be over there. It's a good rivalry. So, and then Alex, one more thing, just upcoming schedule. Who do you guys got Friday? When does district start?
Yeah, so we have Benbrook on Friday, home game on Friday, and then district. We won't start our district until like 3 weeks from now, since we have a 16 district. So yeah, but we're excited. We're looking forward to it. We're hoping, our goal is to make playoffs again and hopefully get past that first round.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll be sure to come out to some Lake Worth games, and then in the future check out some boys volleyball.
Perfect.
Awesome. We appreciate you guys. That's Alex Oppenborn with Lake Worth and Fort Worth Fire, and David Rainwater with Fort Worth Fire. Thanks a lot for joining me.
Thank you.
All right. I'm Brian Gossett with Game Time with the Goss. Be sure to tune in on our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.